We are in the fiduciary service business, and the fiduciary service business is divided into a couple of segments. That's the trust administration business and the company administration business. In the trust, we act as trustees of the trusts, and then the administration, we basically run the core administrative basics of the companies. And these companies are usually SPCs, SPVs, BACs, WLLs. It depends on the type of companies and structures that we have. Yes, exactly. It's hard to tell because this type of business, it's humongous. It's a huge business, but this type of business serves a lot of sectors and a lot of fields, across the globe, and then it serves also the individuals. So it's massive in a way. Let me give you an example. Nobody will buy a property, especially a commercial property in the UK, in London itself, without, putting it through a structure. So, for example, there was some numbers that Jersey manages about 2.4 trillion pounds of real estate structures in London only. So that's on the real estate side only, massive. Ultra high net worth individuals, and when we talk about ultra high net worth, we define the ultra high net worth as $100 million and above, or 100 million pounds and above. You think of it in the GCC, you have about 10,000 individuals or 10,000 families, high net worth defined in the GCC itself. So you can imagine the numbers, or the sheer numbers, is massive. Most of the international funds, you're talking about mutual funds or hedge funds or private equity funds, are incorporated offshore in one way or another, be it in, for example, Luxembourg or Guernsey or Cayman or BVI. All these, hedge funds are listed, in these properties. So it just gives you an idea about the magnitude of this industry. In the Middle East, however, this is relatively new concept. Well, let me correct myself. It's an old, new concept. Historically, the trust came from al-Waqf. It's an Islamic concept, and this concept was taken by the European Crusades, in their first Crusades, and they took it back to Europe and the UK especially, and have developed it over the years, and it came to what we know it today. But the trust in its new form, was introduced to Bahrain, and the leadership in Bahrain had the vision really to utilize and to capitalize on that, and they've looked around in the globe and they said that Bahrain certainly meets the criteria of an offshore center, and it was a very good fertile ground for the trust business, and thus came the royal decree to introduce the trust law in 2006. And then, proudly so, we became the first two companies to be regulated under the Central Bank of Bahrain to act as a trustee in the Bahraini financial service. We think trust business is about to explode in this area, and this is why we think there is tremendous growth opportunities. You have relatively new wealth in the area. When I say relatively, it's about 50, 60, 70 years. And now you started to see the third generation of these pioneering families, trading families, contracting families, became where the patriarch either just passed away or about to pass away, and are giving the leadership to the third generation. You're right, in that sense, there is about 95% of the businesses do not make it past the third generation. That's right. And there is a very good reasons for that. Mainly is the lack of structuring. How is that so? This issue has been really talked about a lot in the family business forums, in Bahrain business, or in the region actually. And you have practical, and then you have cultural factors. Culturally speaking, you have the patriarch who established the business and really pulled up his sleeves and worked so hard to establish the business from zero. And then the sons understood the father's mentality, took over the business, and maybe improved improved it and made it more sophisticated, and then you came to the third generation where you have a lot of inheritance, and then when you started, this is where you start to have the problems occurring. You will have different ideas, different visions, from different leaders, and each wanted to do something different, and plus also, some grandchildren want to spend extra maybe, or just maybe get out of the core line of that family. But with proper structuring, first of all, you take the family from being a family to sort of like a corporate entity. So you introduce constitution and you introduce a charter where the family members abide by it. So it becomes like an institution really, rather than a family. And emotions on a side, you give the leadership, to the qualified and to the most qualified, personnel within the family or even outside the family. If you have that succession and generation planning, done properly, and then if you have the assets ring-fenced, and when I say ring-fenced, these assets are protected. So when I say protected, this means that creditors, for example, cannot attack it. You have a lot of people that try to infringe on the affairs of the family, cannot really touch those assets. So this is what I mean by ring-fencing those assets. Then you're going to have you're setting up this company to be quite more successful for generations to come. So that's why it is extremely important for these these families to regulate their affairs. I'm not really an expert on the regulatory bodies, but in Bahrain I can speak, on the Central Bank of Bahrain. Central Bank of Bahrain is by far the maturest and most professional financial institution regulatory body in the GCC. First of all, they have the experience. They became, an offshore center back in the early 70s. So they have acquired the experiences, over the years in dealing with all type of financial service providers, be it retail banks, investment banks, private banks, private equity firms, real estate firms. That's number one. Number two, it is truly run by a professional group of managers that really adapt, and they have a very good dialogue with their regulated entities and stakeholders. So there is always that two-way channels, and they certainly learn a lot from the experiences. Let's look at the 2008, how the central bank was extremely fast in reacting and monitoring these financial companies. Yes, there's been few companies that ran into difficulties, but the central bank was quite responsive in that. So in my view, the Central Bank of Bahrain is a very well regulated entity that really gives the investor here the confidence to come in and run their financial institutions out of Bahrain.
Yeah.
Bahrain has a lot to offer, actually. This is not well positioned or capitalized, I might say, that a lot of people don't know. Bahrain has, for example, one of the best regulated entity to open a company. If you're a foreigner, who wants to open a company in the area, Bahrain gives you probably the fastest, incorporation, of a company in the process-wise, in comparison to other jurisdictions. Culturally, also, Bahrain and Bahrainis are quite tolerant and open to a lot of ideas and a lot of international societies. So, no matter who the investor is, they really can feel welcomed in Bahrain. The regulatory framework, Bahrain has one of the best and maturest labor laws in the areas here. Their judicial system is very transparent. So, there is, and also, Bahrain is geographically located in a very strategic place, to do business with Kuwait, Saudi, Qatar, United Arab Emirates. Everybody speaks, at least, two languages here. So you really have a lot, that goes for Bahrain. There's so many factors to count. Yes. Well, we already are the Middle Eastern hub, where we cover, the whole of Middle East out of Bahrain. So we are highly committed to Bahrain and to the region. We came to Bahrain through the most difficult times in the end of 2008, where a lot of people were thinking of moving out or not opening or delaying or scrapping their plans. Okay, so in that sense, yes, we are very committed to Bahrain. As far as our growth plans, we have a lot of on the table to plan for, and we are thinking of adding extra services, additional service lines. For example, we will be adding the corporate services here, where we do a global secretarial service, to all these companies. To give you an example, you get an investment bank, they have probably 50, 60 SPVs, all over the world. We can manage those and outsource it to one single point of contact, and we can manage all of these entities, out of one desk, in Bahrain. So this is and technology also is helping us, acting as a global secretariat. That's one of the areas that we want to increase on. We're seeing a lot of interest also in real estate. So real estate is coming back as a collective, investment vehicles. Bahrain has just introduced laws back in May, to regulate REITs, which is Real Estate Investment Trust.
That's right.
And we're very happy about this. We think there is a lot of potential in that, to make a yield income generation investment vehicles for investors. Excuse me. So there is, we're adding ourselves, we're adding, more employees, we're moving to a new location, new offices, in a few weeks' time, and we'll be adding more employees. So there is, there is a lot of potential really to service the area out of Bahrain. Bahrain itself, as a financial service platform, has been the pioneer, on Islamic finance. It's not a secret that they were literally the first ones to start it. If you look at all these conferences worldwide, Bahrain has the 22nd World Banking Islamic Conference. Now, as far as products are concerned, where we act as an international / Islamic finance here, we service, or we help those Islamic banks, and also international institutions and government really structure their Islamic banking vehicles. For example, sukuk. We can structure the sukuk out of a Bahrain structure, to really implement, to have it, be it a private sukuk or listed sukuk, So this is one of the areas that we have, we're very strong in. We can structure all type of Islamic transactions like mudarabas, murabaha, mutajaras. On the convention side, when we say international finance, we do, for example, creditors take on, where we help banks and company restructure their affairs. So this is where we do international finance. We do monetization, merger and acquisition. All of these transactions, they do need some structures one way or another, and that's where we can help. Slower growth is expected because of the energy sector, simply because the region is dependent on it. But let's not forget that this region is also evolving on the private sector side. So there is always, people will always trade, they will always buy and sell. Yes, these activities will be reduced, as far as government introducing new projects, for example. A lot of the governments are talking about austerity measures now. So yes, there will be that, slower effect, but in our business, we can always, do well, either on the upside or the downside, because, in the downside, people tend to restructure their affairs to make their engines, let's say, more efficient. So you will see, companies or banks maybe, reduce employees, or they will just try to sell off, one arm or another, and try to survive that upcoming period, be it 1, 2, 3 years. So on the growth side. So yes, we do see a slower activity coming, and we expect that. But as far as growth, we do see a slower activity coming, and we expect that. But as far as growth, we do see a slower activity coming, and we expect that. But as far as growth, we do see a slower activity coming, and we expect that. But as far as growth, we do see a slower activity coming, and we expect that. But as far as growth, we do see a slower activity coming, and we expect that. But as far as growth, we do see a slower activity coming, and we expect that. But as far as growth, we do see a slower activity coming, and we expect that. But as far as growth, we do see a slower activity coming, and we expect that. But as far as growth, we do see a slower activity coming, and we expect that. But as far as growth, we do see a slower activity coming, and we expect that. But as far as growth, we do see a slower activity coming, and we expect that. But as far as growth, we do see a slower activity coming, and we expect that. But as far as growth, we do see a slower activity coming, and we expect that. But as f the growth for the trust business. On the contrary, this is a good time because this is when people are expected to be more efficient and thus restructure their affairs. As far as well, we're small companies, so really we do not have a lot of benefit, but who benefits from it? As far as if you're talking about, for example, individual Bahraini families who employs a lot of Bahrainis, we help those families obviously become more efficient. We run their affairs efficiently. As far as the human resource side of versus the growth area, this is really a difficult question for me to answer because we do not have really access to that directly. But one of the things that we do, we offer these what do you call under performance reward management programs. We offer those pension or saving schemes, and we help banks and companies in Bahrain really organize their laborers and their workers affair, where we structure their pension plans and their saving schemes or stock option plans. We ring fence those assets, so if there is dangers, in the economy, if there are dangers from these companies, let's say, to go under or bankrupt, we ring fence those assets away from the balance sheet, so there will be no threat, on the pension of these employees. Obviously, Capital Club is for us, is really a platform, for us to network, to do business, to make meetings, to entertain our guests also. It's a very fine institution. Its members are the creme de la creme and the decision makers in Bahrain. We are proud to be members with the Capital Club. The activities that they hold and the type of business mediums that they hold really helps, not only networking, but it helps you to stage your ideas, to really broadcast your visions about Bahrain, to share your views with others. So it is really distinguishing itself as a truly business club member, business club, that I would say, and that's why these individuals and institutions really became members in this fine institution.